Carthage did not begin as an empire, it began as a gamble. Founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre around the 9th century BC, the city emerged at a strategic point along the North African coast, exactly where Mediterranean trade routes could be controlled. From the very beginning, its location defined its destiny. Situated in what is now Tunisia, Carthage was not just a port, it was a hub connecting East and West, Africa and Europe, commerce and power. While many ancient cities relied on agriculture or territorial conquest, Carthage built its strength through the sea. Its first inhabitants brought with them the naval expertise of the Phoenicians, one of the most advanced maritime civilizations of antiquity, and quickly transformed the small colony into a highly efficient trading center. Carthaginian ships crossed the Mediterranean carrying metals, textiles, ceramics, ivory, and spices, creating an economic network that stretched from the Iberian Peninsula to the Middle East. Unlike isolated cities, Carthage was born connected, and that connection would become its greatest competitive advantage. Over the centuries, the city grew not only in wealth, but in influence. Its commerce-based economy generated a powerful elite composed of merchants and influential families who controlled political and strategic decisions. Unlike traditional monarchies, Carthage developed a more complex form of government, with magistrates, councils, and assemblies that balanced power and economic interests. This structure allowed for fast and strategic decision-making, essential for a city that depended on the speed of trade and the security of maritime routes. But wealth attracts attention and threat. To protect its interests, Carthage invested heavily in its navy, becoming the dominant naval power in the Western Mediterranean. Its ports were
designed with remarkable precision, including the famous circular military harbor capable of housing hundreds of warships, organized so that each vessel had rapid access to the sea. This infrastructure was not just functional, it was a demonstration of power. The city did not just trade, it controlled. Meanwhile, inland, Carthage also expanded its influence. Instead of conquering territories in the traditional sense, it established colonies and strategic trading posts, securing access to essential resources such as silver, gold, and food. Regions like Sicily, Sardinia, and parts of the Iberian Peninsula became key components of its supply network. This indirect approach allowed for expansion without constant warfare, keeping the focus on what truly sustained the city, the continuous flow of wealth. By around 200 BC, Carthage was no longer just a city, it was a global power of the ancient world. Its population grew, its streets were filled with merchants from different cultures, and its markets reflected the diversity of an empire built on trade. Luxury was visible, but so was organization. Full warehouses, busy docks, and efficient administration kept the city functioning like a precise machine. However, behind this prosperity, a growing tension began to emerge. As Carthage expanded its influence, another power appeared on the horizon: Rome. Unlike Carthage, Rome did not rely on trade, it relied on conquest. And when two powers with such different models begin to compete for the same space, conflict stops being a possibility and becomes inevitable. Carthage had built its wealth by dominating the sea. Rome was about to challenge that dominance. And this clash would not only change the fate of a city, it would reshape the balance of power across the entire ancient world. By around 200 BC, Carthage had reached a level of development that few cities in the ancient world could match. It was not just wealthy, it was sophisticated, organized, and strategically designed to sustain power on a large scale. Its urban structure directly reflected its role as the economic and military center of the Western Mediterranean. The city rose on a naturally protected peninsula, with direct access to the sea and elevated terrain that allowed for defense and visual control of the surrounding area. At the heart of Carthage was its port system, one of the greatest engineering achievements of antiquity. Unlike ordinary ports, Carthage had two interconnected harbors, one commercial and one military. The commercial harbor was wide and constantly active, filled with ships arriving from different regions, loaded with goods that supplied local markets and fueled the city's economy. The military harbor was even more impressive. Built in a circular shape known as the Carthage, it was designed with strategic precision. Around the circle, individual docks housed warships, while at the center stood an island with command structures from which officers coordinated movements and operations. This system allowed the Carthaginian navy to mobilize hundreds of vessels quickly, ensuring an immediate response to any threat at sea. This naval capacity established Carthage as the dominant maritime power of its time. No other city in the Western Mediterranean possessed such an organized and efficient fleet. Its ships were fast, well-built, and designed for both combat and the protection of trade routes. Control of the sea was not just an advantage, it was the foundation of Carthaginian power. But Carthage did not rely solely on its navy. Its land-based military system was also highly functional, though different from other powers. Instead of an army composed primarily of citizens, Carthage relied on mercenary troops from various regions, including North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, and even parts of Europe. These soldiers were specialized, experienced, and adaptable, allowing Carthage to assemble diverse military forces depending on the needs of each conflict. This approach provided flexibility, but also created dependency, something that would later become a vulnerability. Politically, Carthage operated under a complex system that combined aristocratic and republican elements. Two chief magistrates, known as suffetes, held executive functions similar to civic leaders, while a council of elders, composed of members from the most influential families, made long-term strategic decisions. In addition, assemblies played roles in certain matters, creating a system that balanced political power with economic interests. This model ensured internal stability and allowed decisions to be made with a focus on sustained growth. Life within Carthage reflected this prosperity. The streets were busy, with merchants, artisans, and workers moving between markets and workshops. Goods from different parts of the world were sold side by side, creating a culturally diverse and economically vibrant environment. Well-built houses, organized administrative areas, and religious centers demonstrated the level of urban development achieved by the city. Temples dedicated to deities such as Baal, Hammon, and Tanit were central to spiritual life, showing that despite its commercial nature, Carthage also maintained a strong religious identity. However, all this structure, ports, military, government, and economy, existed to sustain something greater: regional dominance. Carthage was not just an isolated, prosperous city. It controlled strategic territories, influenced trade routes, and maintained a network of allies and colonies that ensured a constant flow of resources. Regions such as Sicily and the Iberian Peninsula were essential to this system, providing metals, food, and access to new trade routes. This level of control transformed Carthage into a global power of the ancient world, with reach far beyond local borders. But the greater the power, the greater the competition for it. While Carthage consolidated its dominance at sea, Rome expanded its influence on land. Two powers with completely different models were now converging on the same strategic space. The Mediterranean did not have room for two dominant forces competing for control. And as their spheres of influence began to overlap, conflict stopped being a distant possibility and became an imminent reality. Carthage was at the height of its power, but that peak was about to be tested like never before. The confrontation between Carthage and Rome did not arise from a single isolated event. It was the inevitable result of two expanding powers competing for control of the same strategic space. While Carthage dominated the sea and controlled vital trade routes, Rome rapidly expanded by land, consolidating its power across the Italian peninsula and beginning to look beyond its borders. The point of collision came in Sicily, an island essential for trade and supply in the central Mediterranean. When Carthaginian and Roman interests began to overlap there, the conflict shifted from diplomacy to open war. Thus began the First Punic War, a long and exhausting struggle that revealed something unexpected. Rome, despite lacking naval tradition, was able to adapt quickly. By copying Carthaginian ships and developing new strategies, the Romans managed to challenge Carthage's maritime dominance. After years of battles, massive losses, and economic strain, Carthage was forced to retreat, losing control of Sicily, a significant blow to its power structure. But this was not the end of the conflict. It was only the beginning of something much larger. Determined to recover its position, Carthage turned its attention to the Iberian Peninsula, where it established a new base of power. It was there that one of the most iconic figures in military history emerged: Hannibal Barca. The son of a Carthaginian general, Hannibal grew up in an environment shaped by war against Rome. From a young age, he was prepared for a single objective: to confront and defeat the power that had challenged Carthage. When the Second Punic War began, Hannibal executed one of the most daring strategies ever recorded. Instead of confronting Rome directly by sea, he chose to attack by land, crossing the Iberian Peninsula, moving through southern Gaul, and then accomplishing the unthinkable: crossing the Alps with a full army, including war elephants. This maneuver was not just a demonstration of courage, it was a psychological strike. Rome did not expect an attack from that direction, and the impact was immediate. Upon entering Italy, Hannibal launched a series of remarkable victories. Battles such as Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and most notably Cannae demonstrated the tactical superiority of his forces. At Cannae, Hannibal encircled and destroyed a much larger Roman army, delivering one of the most devastating defeats in Rome's military history. For years, he maintained a presence within Roman territory, directly threatening its stability. However, despite his victories, there was a structural problem. Carthage failed to provide the support necessary to turn these victories into a definitive conquest. Without sufficient reinforcements and without consistent strategic backing, Hannibal remained isolated in enemy territory. Rome, on the other hand, demonstrated what would become its greatest strength: resilience. Instead of collapsing, it reorganized its armies, avoided direct confrontations, and adopted a strategy of attrition. At the same time, it attacked Carthaginian bases outside Italy, including those in the Iberian Peninsula. Eventually, Rome brought the war to North Africa, forcing Carthage to recall Hannibal. The final confrontation took place at the Battle of Zama. This time, Rome was prepared. Under the command of Scipio Africanus, the Roman army managed to neutralize Hannibal's tactics and defeat his forces. This defeat marked the end of the Second Punic War and drastically altered the balance of power in the Mediterranean. Carthage lost territories, wealth, and most importantly, its position as the dominant power. But Rome was not interested in simply winning; it wanted to eliminate any future threat entirely. Even weakened, Carthage still existed, still possessed wealth, and still represented a potential risk. This ongoing tension would lead to a third and final conflict, far more direct and definitive. What began as a struggle for influence had become a fight for survival. And this time, there would be no recovery. The final phase of Carthage's history was not marked by recovery, but by inevitability. After its defeat in the Second Punic War, the city still existed, still maintained part of its economic structure, and still functioned as a relevant commercial center. However, its military power had been drastically reduced, its trade routes were restricted, and its political autonomy was under constant Roman surveillance. Carthage was no longer a dominant power; it was a city surviving under the shadow of an enemy that now controlled the Mediterranean. Even weakened, Carthage managed, over the following decades, to rebuild part of its economy. Its commercial capacity remained efficient, and its location continued to be a strategic asset. Merchants returned, markets grew again, and signs of prosperity began to reappear. But this recovery did not go unnoticed. In Rome, many viewed any Carthaginian growth as a direct threat. Among them was Cato the Elder, a Roman politician who repeatedly insisted on a phrase that would become famous: Carthage must be destroyed. This mindset reflected a critical turning point. For Rome, it was not enough to win; it was necessary to eliminate any possibility of future rivalry. Tensions escalated when local conflicts involving Carthage and neighboring peoples were used as justification for direct Roman intervention. Even under the restrictions imposed after the previous war, Carthage was accused of violating agreements, creating the pretext needed for a new attack. Thus began the Third Punic War. Unlike the previous conflicts, this would not be a struggle for territory or influence. It would be a campaign of total destruction. Roman forces surrounded Carthage and initiated a prolonged siege. For years, the city resisted. Its inhabitants, now without their former military power, relied on improvisation, urban resistance, and sheer determination to survive. Weapons were produced within the city itself, resources were rationed, and every part of the urban structure was used for defense. The siege was not only military, it was psychological. Rome was determined to break the city completely. Over time, resistance began to collapse. Hunger, exhaustion, and constant pressure weakened the city's defensive capacity. When Roman forces finally breached the defenses, what followed was not a simple occupation, it was systematic destruction. Streets were seized, homes were invaded, and intense fighting took place within the city itself. The population was captured,